On this episode of AV Week, what a deskless workspace means for AV dealers, the good and bad of manufacturer partnerships, and we take a swing at debating AV as a service. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 419, recorded Friday, August 30th, 2019. Pros and cons.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by
Vadio, makers of the new NDI professional broadcast camera, the RoboShot 30E NDI, with simultaneous HDMI and full NewTek NDI streaming.
And by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, I guess you could call him my partner in crime, the gentleman who does this other show every single week called Resi Week. His name is Matt D. Scott. He is from Omega Audio Video. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Also with us, two brand new folks. So Matt, be nice to them. First and foremost, Melody Cragmile from Almo Professional AV. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Tim.
And also Adam Robertson from Jabra. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And if you're watching the video, Adam is also highlighting one of the things that they have now. It's a Panacast. So the wide angle camera there. So enjoy that. If you're not watching it, just imagine him being wide. All right, first story we have here comes to us from Sound and Communications. Cisco, Honeywell, and Theatro actually makes an interesting trio. The three have joined forces to transform, quote unquote, the future of retail, hospitality, manufacturing, and other markets with large deskless workforces. The article goes on to describe what Theatro's voice-driven AI platform, or intelligent assistant platform, rather, it allows workers to do and allows designers to do, honestly. The one interesting thing here, and Matt, we're going to start with you on this, is the three players here. You've got Theatro, which does voice. You've got Cisco, which is obviously a heavy network, but also they also do video conferencing and things like that. And then you've got Honeywell. These three players driving, or at least attempting to drive, this future of deskless workspaces. What do we think about the fact that these three are coming together in such a way, and how is this going to impact the folks that are going into office spaces every single day, designing and bringing AV to them?
I think the really interesting aspect of this is what you kind of alluded to there with Honeywell. Theatro makes tons of sense. Cisco, of course, makes miles of sense. This is their jam right now. Used to be strictly IT. Now it is 100% UC. Honeywell is the fun little addition to this. Honeywell is a massive company, but they also have a massive investment in BIM and building information management systems and things such as that. And we've seen this trend from a lot of the manufacturers within our channel, where they're really starting to leverage the information that they can pull out of the business, out of the businesses, out of the offices, out of the actual building. And I'm really intrigued to see where this goes. I'm very intrigued to watch how this whole deskless environment progresses, because if you've been following the open office conversations that have been happening the last 5 to 10 years, we're now starting to see that shift back. Even New York Times and Globe and Mail and a bunch of the other mainstream press are starting to report that open offices are starting to not be in vogue the way they were in the early 2010s. So the deskless aspect of this really is going to be very interesting to watch. But again, you throw Cisco and Honeywell to pull all the building aspects of them, put those two together. If anybody's going to really understand how to do this well and effectively, it's those two players.
Well, and Millie, let's talk about that for a second. Is this open office versus closed office versus whatever the hoteling, the other types of offices? When we start talking about the design, we start talking about what employers or building owners, I'm hesitating here because it depends on who you are and whether or not you own the building, whether or not you're leasing the building, right? And how you're able to best utilize both the technology as well as the investment in the space. What do we think is going to be like kind of the future of this when it comes to getting the dealers, giving them the tools to be able to tell the client, hey, regardless of whatever kind of structure you want to put in place, again, whether it's open, whether it's having offices or hoteling, we're going to be able to help you with the analytics and the data to help you make better decisions. Does something like this help with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple aspects to it. I think that, the dealers, really have to, understand the culture of the company that they're going to be working with. I heard a lady named Kay Sargent from HOK architecture firm speak about this exact type of thing with the deskless, and she says in some cases, it's also a cultural thing. She said, if you bring people over from Asia and you don't have an office, then it seems like that you are not important enough. So in some cases, they have, for this, one company that didn't have any offices, they built 16 conference rooms, and each executive had their own conference room. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with, companies becoming so much more global and so much more engaged. I think it is kind of in vogue and cool, but I think the dealers are going to have to understand the cultural nuances of the company and of their customers who will be coming into the environment.
Real quickly, and this is total side note to any of the three of you. Is it a step up or a promotion if you have your own conference room, but maybe not your own office? That's impressive.
I'll take a conference room in a second.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
No, I don't have an office, but you know what? I have my own conference room. So I think that's kind of cool. All right, Adam. When it comes to making sure that these spaces can be seen and heard, regardless of whether they are connecting, what is getting feedback and getting the information and these analytics mean for not only folks like you who are trying to create new things, but also for the dealers trying to feed back into their clients and their clients' ROI?
I mean, we're seeing basically that the edge of the balance where it's tipping now, where the devices we deploy, to your point, they can't just be a headset, can't just be a camera, because as you pack more of these people on top of each other, then you start looking at real estate getting involved. It's not just the IT decision makers sitting by themselves anymore. It's real estate, it's HR. They got to look at employee wellness. You got to look at how you're managing everything. And if you can get information in from those endpoints, are you packing the people too densely? Is certain areas of the office environment too much? Because all this noise affects the way the employees work, it affects their productivity. And unless the IT person or the real estate person is standing there at the time, it's very hard for them to collect data. So we're feeling the pressure on our side to turn our endpoints into basically data points as well. So I've got my headset, I can hear what's going on, but at the same time, we need the back end to be recording what is the noise like, what are the audio levels like, do we need to start knowing that we need to address certain flaws in the building, and that just puts additional pressure on us to make sure that the headsets can do more. And we already are doing more, our competitors are doing more, and now really it's going to be the case of the ROI is not just going to be, did I successfully deploy my UC system? Great. But now the ROI is your adoption rate up? Are you seeing real change? Because the work is changing. I mean, our tasks are harder, and because of that, we need to collaborate more. So we're talking more with each other. This deskless concept is interesting because you need to get up from your desk to go speak to a specialist. You need to be able to come back, and it's just mobility is a very big part of it as well.
Well, if I can add a comment, what I find so fascinating about this entire concept, and again, a lot of the manufacturers are moving towards this data aspect. In the past, when you would go and try and spec a room, you'd ask your client, what rooms are most important? Where do you put your executives? Where do you put your huddle spaces, et cetera, et cetera? And it would always usually be anecdotal at best. Now we're pulling not only information directly from our products and our services that we're putting into those spaces, but we're also pulling business information out of the building. And I think the building data that you can pull is going to be even more or even less jaded than the technology data that we're pulling.
More
it's really cool to watch.
Yeah, more true, more pure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before we move on to the next story here, Melody mentioned Kay Sargent. Actually, she's our next guest on our next architect show. It's a brand new show that we started about 4 or 5 months ago, interviewing architects. And Melody, it was Megan Dutta from SCN who actually told me about that session and how impressed she was, and a number of you guys were. So
yeah, she's going to be speaking at our E4 AV tour in Atlanta on that's going to be on October 15th. So she's going to be talking about the workspace of the future and going through some of those trends, the things that HOK is seeing from their clients, design trends and how it affects AV. And so we're excited to have her as a part of that.
Absolutely, and I'm actually going to be at the New Jersey, the New York area one, September 25th. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a second too. Next story comes to us from friends over at AV Magazine. Speaking of me going places, I'm going to be heading over there with our buddy Chris Netto for their annual awards ceremony over in October. So we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. We'll tell you more about that. But VuWall and LG have created a corporate partnership offering customers, quote unquote, a fully integrated control room solution that combines VuWall's advanced ViewScape video wall processor with LG's latest video wall display. You click on the link, it's quite impressive. Melody, I want to start with you on this. As a distributor, companies like this, they form partnerships, and sometimes they actually form partnerships with you guys as well. When it comes to that, what are some of the pros of that? When you are talking with dealers, how do you approach them and say, you know what, here's the benefits? Generally talk about here, obviously I don't want you to talk about specifically what the pro of one specific partnership is, but in general, what are some of the pros you guys see as with manufacturers coming together in themselves, but also partnering with you guys?
I think one of the pros is that when these companies come together, they get their engineers in a room and they make sure that these products and solutions are going to actually work really well together. So I think part of the benefit is it's pre-vetted. They know that it's going to work, and they've identified any of the pain points and tried to work those out for the integrators, because at the end of the day they're trying to make it sort of, I don't mean plug and play, but they're trying to make it, a better experience, for the integrator. I think one of the cons for some of these manufacturers is, most of the times the integrators, they have their partners they like to work with. They have their set play, and introducing something else into the mix, especially for the really big guys, that can kind of be a little bit, unsettling. So, I think there are pros and cons, and for us as a distributor, sometimes they might bring in a partner that we don't have a relationship with, and that can end up being a little problematic in terms of, inventory and how we count that. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest pro is the pre-vetting of the solutions working together.
It's a huge one. Adam, from a manufacturer standpoint, walk me through this process. Somebody comes to you and says, Adam, we've got this great idea. We want to take Jabra and we want to put it here, right, regardless of where here is. Walk me through that process, and to Melody's point, how you guys are able to vet those opportunities and make sure that you're serving both your clients well.
I mean, there's obviously it's supply and demand, right? The larger players in the market will pull in the most attention in terms of trying to get your device certified on their systems, making sure it works. And Melody touched on exactly all the right points. It's because you just want to be able to deploy the system and not have to worry about someone having to go around and tweak and change and modify things, because in the end, the more complexity you introduce, just the less chance that the system's going to get deployed right. So when we work with a partner to do that, it's about trying to lower the barrier. If you know that you can deploy hardware into a place without having to introduce new software, new back-end systems, I'll give an example of a common one. So if you're Teams certified with Microsoft Teams, and knowing that all of our data and all of our input points as these devices become more complex can show up within those terminals without having to install more software, without having to go through IT security to get additional things vetted and approved. If you know that you can just plug into an already existing system and get everything out there, full use of the product, that's just going to make the path to getting everything deployed that much smoother. The challenge for us comes then is, as certain industries get disrupted, as more players come in, that just means there's extra work for us to make sure we're authorized and certified with all the multitude of providers that are out there, because then it'll be Teams, it'll be Zoom, it'll be Cisco, it'll carry on all the way along the line, right? So we can easily make a plug and play device that works, but then getting that certification means that you just allow more things to be present within an existing system. And that's not just the UC systems itself, interestingly enough, it's also the rise of all the UC monitoring systems, like a service like Nectar, right? Or anything else like that, where IT departments deploy a monitoring system and they then want to be able to control their devices through that. We need to also make sure that us as a manufacturer are working with them. Because if you're using a UC monitoring system to monitor the client and the hardware and the network and everything, you've got to then be able to be present in that as well. So it definitely is a case of just lowering the barrier and making sure that it's easier to get in place.
Real quickly before I get Matt in on this, can you give me, from a manufacturer's point of view, the difference for you guys between partnering directly with someone and like you go to them or they come to you and say, let's work together, versus joining, let's say, you mentioned Teams, joining like make sure that your products are Teams certified. In other words, there's this open program, Microsoft's like, here you go, guys, here's the standards, here's the process. If you want your products to become Teams certified, here you go, you're more than welcome to, but so are all these other folks over here, right? Versus it's just you and Zoom, right? Or it's just you and Cisco.
Well, the challenge is, there's pros and cons. If it's just us and one, then naturally you could go very deep. And you can start to even co-join in your development and develop things that are unique to that ecosystem. And that gives you a real powerful integration. But the other part of it is, if you're looking at just a larger one where there's a whole lot of people trying to get certified, the challenge then becomes going through the certification process is pretty standard. A lot of the bigger organizations have a set process, set testing facilities to do all of this. But then you get the challenge of it's harder to push new tech into those systems. As an example, this 180-degree field of view, when a company sets in their video standards, they're not thinking 180-degree field of view. They're thinking anywhere between 90 and 120 degrees, right, diagonal. And that's how they expect their system to work ideally. And then suddenly you've got this kind of boundary barrier breaking piece of tech in place, and then the certification process needs to change. And that then comes down to a lot of pressure on a relationship with the system owner. Can we then get their specs changed to include this? And vice versa, it also happens in reverse. They might bring in new tech and bring that to us and say, look, you've got to get your hardware updated to match this. But more often than not, between many of us manufacturers, as we try to differentiate, it's us trying to get new tech built into the standard certification.
Good. Matt, from a dealer standpoint, somebody comes to you and says, you can get this or you can get this, but you can get them together, it's going to be all the better. What are the pros and cons from you guys, from your point of view, of these manufacturer partnerships?
The biggest pro is always the fact that, in theory, you get a certified solution. You can walk in and say, hey, we're specing a VuWall, it's going to come with this, 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 and this, and it's already been engineered. We don't have to do the engineering in-house to make sure that that's going to function. The con of it is when it doesn't actually work properly, or when it becomes something where you really want to spec, in this case, those LG panels, but you do not want to use that media server. But your supplier pushes so heavily and gives you so much pushback that this is the approved solution, you should be using this, but it may not always fit what you're trying to do. So it's, from our end, it's always a balance of, we love it when there's a partnership that brings two parties together and makes our job and our life easier. It's a challenge when that gets pushed so heavily that you almost get shunned when you try to go another direction. And like anything, the main jux of what we do in this industry is put a lot of stuff together and make it work. Probably 90% of the time you can take that predefined solution and it's fine. But for that 10% of the time, everyone has to be flexible, knowing that there are situations where that just doesn't work out.
All right, guys, last story here comes to us from commercial integrator and our buddy Craig McCormick, writing about AV as a service. And go read the whole thing. We'll put the link on this episode page. But I want to point out a couple of things. CI did a state of the industry report for 2019. And a couple of things I want to pull out here. Number one is that more than 1/4 of survey responders earn nothing, zero, from service. They've no RMR, no recurring monthly revenue. 60% of those who took the survey bring in less than 5% of their overall revenue from service, and only 4% of survey respondents say that they generate more than 1/3 of their revenue from service. And I'm going to start with you on this from the manufacturer's side, and I actually probably should start with Melody and Adam on this, and then end with Matt, or start with Matt and go that way. From the manufacturer's side, you guys work with dealers on a daily basis. Is recurring revenue, is AV as a service, something that they're thinking about, something that they're working towards, and they're just not finding it? Or is it simply something that you're finding that they're just not, it's not on their radar at all, and it's not something that they're concerned about?
I mean, it's safe to say anything as a service is a major topic for everyone, because if you can shift into a recurring revenue model that allows flexibility, that's obviously in a very ideal situation. The difficulty is it's across the board difficult, because it's not just the dealers or our distribution partners or anyone else like that, or us. It's also on the client side, on the customers. It's how do they get their budget allocated to them? It's a case of the IT manager. He gets given a set budget to deploy with. He doesn't get given a reoccurring budget to go and spend over a period of time. And those conversations get very tough, and we need to work together with partners to say, well, what are the advantages of it and what are the disadvantages? And right now, it's really just the complexity of getting it set up. It's the article itself actually touched on some very good points. It's about retraining sales forces, retraining partnerships. Those are all very valid things, because if you're going from I get my invoice and I'm done and I'm deployed and now I'm moving on to the next project, and that's what a lot of big companies do. They live on a project by project budget. No one's really got a continual revenue stream. That's a cultural break that you need to navigate. And for us, it's the hardest part, or the hardest part in this discussion for anything as a service is managing the cultural break. And it doesn't feel like the industry is completely just there yet, that they're ready to just switch, because it seems through the line that this is a challenge.
Well, Melody, same kind of question to you, because Almo over the last 10 years has developed programs for their customers, right? To almost to encourage recurring revenue, right? You guys are creating some projects like, here, take this, you can get RMR with this. What are you guys finding when you talk to dealers?
Well, I think Adam is right about retraining the salespeople, because I'm going to take content creation for digital signage as an example. If you're talking to the IT guy, you're talking to the wrong guy. It's the marketing departments who have the continuous budget to refresh the content, refresh the ads, or in some cases, it's the HR department. They want to deploy these panels for corporate communications. I mean, just in our own warehouses, we're deploying panels with bright sign players so that we can tell them about wellness tips and safety tips and all these kinds of things. And that's coming from the HR budget. Whereas, in some cases for these other companies like advertising or out of home, it's the marketing departments, and they're not used to having those conversations with creative people. So, we have a group of creative people who also speak AV, and many times they're getting on the calls with the marketing department and the integrator, and Jim Nista, our guy, says, I'm the interpreter between the two people. Like, okay, I want to communicate this. And then the integrator's like, how do we hook it up? And he's like, wait. Let's talk about their advertising goals or the communication goals. So I think the other part of AV as a service is, there's a barrier for entry on the amount of investment that the integrator would have to make in hiring headcount. And, skilled labor in our market right now is already very tight. The unemployment rate is really low. So hiring, recruiting, training those people, that's a big challenge. So what we've tried to do is, provide through our partnership, skilled labor that they can use during the peaks and valleys, or if they don't have that labor at all. We have one customer that has been traditionally been an electrical contractor, now doing some AV coming in, and we're doing all their programming services for them because they were coming on these opportunities for AMX and Crestron programming, but they didn't have programmers, and they're not a traditional AV guy, so they're not kind of stuck in this box, and they're like, wow, that's great, you can do this for us? Cool. So it is kind of changing the mentality, I agree, but also talking to the right people within the organization.
Makes sense. All right, Matt, what's wrong with 30% of your cohorts?
The same thing that was wrong with them when IT came in.
Okay.
This is the same ridiculous conversation, and Joe Way is completely wrong. This is the same.
Let's explain that. Joe Way is one higher education tech manager from
yes,
just recently joined US,
and he's wrong. USC.
And he has a significant problem with AV as a service from being a customer, right? So let's explain that. From being a customer. If you want to, we'll put a link to a panel that I hosted at PSNI this year with a bunch of other tech managers, just for the record. But Joe, Joe has a problem with AV as a service. But go ahead.
And he's still wrong. But this is the same conversation that the industry had back when IT was coming in and everything was becoming and being part of the network, where you had a vast majority of the industry that shunned that for years, and they just kept deferring that off to, oh, that's the IT's world. We're not touching that. We want nothing to do with that. That's not what we do. AV as a service, no matter what flavor of it you want to play in, it is where this industry is going to go. It is where the entire business model is going to shift to. It's just a matter of determining how you're going to do that, or if you're going to get and give that part of the business away. Melody alluded to the creative aspect of creating content. If you don't do it, someone else will, and they'll get paid way more than you will to do it. If you don't want to, supply your offices, that type of corporate client with a monthly service charge on their conferencing systems, someone else will. Walk into any Fortune 500 company and ask them which computer they purchased last, and they'll never be able to tell you because they rent all of it. Half of them rent furniture now. The concept that we can stand in an ivory tower and continue to sell boxes, which is really what this conversation goes down to, of, no, I want to sell you that TV and that Extron system and that audio system for that room. No. You can rent that, and it does it, as Adam and Melanie alluded to. You can completely change your business to do that, and it is a complete change, but it's coming. And if we as an industry don't follow this, very quickly we will continue to get pushed out of places that we thought were concrete, because the IT firms that are already doing this and are already scheduled to do this are just poised to come in and continue to offer this, because they already offer it for everything else. It's a really, I do not understand the battle over this. I somewhat get Joe's frustration with it from an education funding standpoint, but still, it's not that hard to come in, because universities, from an IT standpoint, they lease everything there too.
But I think part of it is Adam mentioned it, retraining people. I think some of that is also retraining, especially in education, because it's been 6 years since I was in higher ed. We still did everything on CapEx, right? And we had a refresh cycle, and we had a refresh cycle. but even 8-10 years ago, they were still migrating towards an operational
OpEx. But as soon as you get enough accountants in those facilities who start looking at the cost of CapEx versus OpEx and go, ooh, we can write off a whole lot more of this a lot faster if it's OpEx. Yeah, it's all going to change. And like we did for a long time with IT, we're liable to sit back and just kind of watch that ship sail and then complain a lot about why couldn't we get into that? My gosh, they're taking all our money. I don't get it. Was that soapbox enough for you?
That was good. I like that. All right. That'll be a good place to stop. Mr. Matt Scott, how people find you and or Omega Audio Video?
You can find me and Omega on Twitter is pretty easy. Matt D. Scott on Twitter, Omega Audio Video on Twitter, and pretty much every other social platform. Our website is OmegaAudioVideo.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me with AVNation doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm everywhere.
You are everywhere. AVNation every single Wednesday, actually, at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern. Adam Robertson from Jabra, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or Jabra?
They can get hold of us, to Matt's point, everywhere and anywhere. Obviously, we're on all major social platforms and obviously our website, but more importantly, if people are looking to get access to our hardware and our equipment and things like that, most major distributors and resellers around the world do stock our product. And obviously, we have existing relationships, so they can easily get in touch with their local account manager as well.
Very good. And last but not least, Melody Craigmile from Almo Professional AV. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I also, sorry about that. You can meet me in person at the E4 events coming up September 25th in New York, New Jersey area, and in Atlanta on October 15th. And that website is e4experience.com, and every day at almoproav.com. And love to meet some of your audience there.
Absolutely, and I mentioned this before, but you get to see you get to see me and Melody together in person on September 25th at the New York Metro area E4 Experience. I'll be there moderating a panel audio that day, so you can actually go to e4experience.com and check that out. Hang out with us for a day in New Jersey. So. Yep. For me, at this point in the NFL season, which I know technically hasn't started yet, but this will post on Monday. And so in 4 days, the Bears will kick off the 100th anniversary of the NFL with hopefully a beatdown of the Green Bay Packers. And that made a couple folks that I know mad. So that's all right. But don't follow me, in other words, on the Twitters. But go by the website, if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including Matt's weekly program. Check out our daily download as well. Almo, a professional AV, is helping us with that and sponsoring that for the next couple of months in the E4. So check that out. Also, while you're there, speaking of our supporters, check out those folks help us financially, help us bring you AV Week and Resi Week. And in about 2 weeks' time, all the coverage from CEDIA 2019 from Denver. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.
I like ranting. I'm a good rant.